when we're talking about Indigenous people right now, it's a common talking point, and we are seeing the pushback from the right wing that are like, well, what are they complaining about? They get free education, they get free money. When they turn 18, they're given a million bajillion dollars. They're allowed to go to astrospace. Like all these just ridiculous, uninformed statements about the sweet, sweet life that Indigenous people have. And what this feeds into is this idea that, therefore, the fact that Indigenous people are not thriving in reservations or thriving in cities is evidence that Indigenous people are just the worst, the absolute gosh darn worst. Obviously, not the fucking case. And I'm going to just quickly explain something. So, when we came here, and I'm referring to, Treaty 7 land, the Blackfoot Confederacy, where I live. When we came here, we agreed on a treaty. Who would get what land and what space, who would, what things we were going to bring to the Indigenous people, like farming tools and techniques that we were going to teach them. And those treaties exist across Canada. In some cases, the land was ceded, although never with the intention of ceding it. And in some cases, the land was not ceded. So that's a thing. But looking at the reservation system, essentially what happened is we said, this is your land, we'll help you out. I don't know that we did help out. I don't think we helped out anywhere near as much as we like to think we did, but Indigenous people started, they had their space, and they built homes and things like that. And those spaces were essentially choked out, for want of a better term. We didn't follow through with giving them a lot of the information around agricultural processes that were promised to them. We didn't give them the equipment that was promised to them and the seeds and things to move from a hunter-gatherer type of environment to an agrarian environment. And they were starving. They were actually starving. When we sent them things, they were often rotten. Yay, that's good. All of this, of course, was for us to be able to have the railway that went across the country. So the short and skinny of it is we did wrong. It was bad. And we put them in a position where they could not thrive. And when you are raised in that environment, it's depressing and it's miserable. And people turn to nursing their pain. Alcohol is a good example. I got told as a kid that Indigenous people had this gene, long before we mapped the human genome. There was this gene that Indigenous people had that made it so that the first taste of alcohol, they were crazy for alcohol. And it just brought out the worst in them and all this stuff. And it's just so tragic. And that, of course, is bullshit. What they have is not necessarily genetic, it's environmental, and it's being raised in an environment that actively tries to squish you out. Turns out, you do a lot of self-medicating in that environment. I self-medicate, and I'm nowhere near that environment. So people, we like to focus on like, oh, there's crime. Did you know that there are 50% of the people in Canadian jails are Indigenous, and they only make up 5% of the population, which means that much like blacks in the United States, they're just bad. Or does it mean there are socioeconomic problems that are fucking them over pretty goddamn hard? Problems that we need to start addressing. I think that second one might be it, but that's just me. Maybe I'm a horrible leftist monster. The funny thing is, we hate welfare recipients of any kind. Unless, of course, you're the welfare recipient, in which case it's super cool. I got to get a real culture shock when I did a firearm inspection at Bowdoin. Those numbers were definitely apparent there. A fire alarm. I thought it said firearm. I'm like inspection or firearm inspection at a jail. Yeah, it's. I've never been to jail, and I knew that Indigenous people were a larger percentage of the prison population, but I had no fucking idea just how staggering that is. It's like the numbers are no bullshit. Like it's literally half of the population, more than half of the population is Indigenous, and that points to unfair treatment and unfair circumstances. So Indigenous people have certain benefits, things like access to social security, or not social security. Jesus, I'm not even American. Access to social programming like welfare, especially I think when they live on reservation, which is a sneaky way of going like, hey, don't leave the reservation, stay where the fuck you are, so we can keep poking on you. The inmates cut me a lot of slack and were welcoming in a way for obvious reasons. The white guys I were with, it was a nightmare for them. I do not doubt it. Where was I? Shit, lost my train of thought. Bitching about Indigenous stuff. Oh yeah, welfare. So they'll do things like, conservatives will post those memes that are like, if I have to piss test to work in heavy oil production, you should have to piss test to be on welfare. Okay, I'm just going to address this real quick. Is it your argument that if someone does drugs, they should be homeless and destitute? Because I think that's a little fucking sick. Is it your argument that people should deserve welfare, or that all people should just deserve welfare, or that they should have to earn it by being pure of heart? Oh, Bender, don't take that as just I can get sidetracked by pretty things. Those memes are garbage, and they're also stupid because if you look at actual states that have put in drug testing for welfare people, it has been extremely expensive and extremely ineffective. So you're looking at hey, we managed to find 3 people who had taken drugs in the last couple of months while they were on welfare, at a cost of $100 million. Yay! That's probably not the best approach. Interestingly, the same people will complain about welfare, but when they are tradespeople and they get laid off in the winter so that they can go back to school for 3 months, and it's a cycle that is encouraged by the government and encouraged by employers. Your employer will hire you on, sign all your books for you. You've accomplished all of the journeyman level 1 stuff. We're gonna lay you off for the winter. You go enroll at SATE, get all your your level your second year stuff, and then you come back and there's a job waiting for you in the summer, and we'll continue. This is welfare too, but it's welfare for white people, so that's different. But you know what solves all of these problems? And I don't mean all problems with residential schools. It doesn't solve problems with, the education status in, the quality of education available on reservations. I'm not saying that. But universal basic income. If you give everybody a universal basic income that will cover the cost of housing and basic survival, you stop having terror about every single, how am I going to eat this month? How am I going? You cut down your crime rate. You cut down on all of the shit, and people suddenly are in a position where they can survive. They can do better. They're not under the oppressive thumb of capitalism, because that's the invisible hand. It's just a thumb. And people thrive. Europe proves this. There's so many places in Europe that have brought in a universal basic income, Gesundheit, and the people do good. You don't have to apologize for sneezing. How dare you sneeze, boy!
You doing your thing.
I will sever your nostrils with this imaginary knife.
Love you.
Love you. Have a good day. It's my eldest son going off to make hay. I don't even know if that's a saying. I don't know. Anyways, UBI is a brilliant concept. When you take away that incredible fear of how will I survive this month, and you allow people to suddenly be able to be like, maybe I'll thrive this month. Maybe I'll do all right. And that depression, we talked about Rat Park, and in previous videos we talked about Rat Park and the idea of addiction being more closely associated with the self-medication as opposed to our previous ideal, which was that you take a drug and it goes into your brain and goes, I must always drug. I am a drug person, which is bullshit. The Vietnam War taught us people who came back didn't stay on heroin, by and large. What changed was their happiness level. Don't forget the Manitoba UBI project back in the 70s. Abby, I don't actually know about that. If you can provide a link or something, I'd love to. We can go over that because I wasn't aware of it. Yeah, but UBI is phenomenal, and in fact, in a recent conversation with all of the political leaders in Canada, everyone was okay with a UBI. Our horrible fuckhead Conservative Party, who are like, Aaron O'Toole is basically like, he's a guy that, like, if he could be anyone, it would be Donald Trump. As incompetent, like he wants to be the incompetent, bumbling Donald Trump, but he's just like a little too incompetent, so he's not quite there yet. He's working on it though. I say excuse me when I sneeze too. Yeah, it's the polite thing to do. Yeah, Aaron O'Toole is the head of the Canadian Conservative Party of Canada, the CPC, which is not to be confused with the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, or the CHACOM. They are the exact opposite. They are worthless conservative talking point people, and that faux libertarian bullshit that drives everyone nuts. Even they were like, yeah, you have to have a UBI. I would suggest $500 a month, which is fucking stupid because you can't survive on $500 a month, meaning the benefit of UBI isn't there. A $2,000 UBI in current terms of how much money people can make and all that kind of stuff essentially means that people can find a place to rent, can have enough for food and utilities and cell phone and all that kind of stuff. It's not a like, oh my god, an amazing life. I see I got a link there from Danny. One sec. I'll pop that open in a second. I just want to sort of prep myself for it. Thank you, Danny. There's a couple of links. I better make sure this tab is muted, otherwise I might... No, it's muted, okay. Where's my thing here? I hate the way Facebook works, just like in general. Yeah, like a $500 UBI is ridiculous. A $2,000 UBI, all of a sudden, that's a fairly reasonable potential solution to a bunch of problems. All right, let's pop open this this BBC article here that Danny sent. Canada's Forgotten Universal Basic Income Experiment. Ooh, pretty. It's a lovely... Manitoba's, sort of notoriously snowy, cold kind of place. It's Canada. We kind of all are, except, Vancouver. Amid wide unemployment during COVID-19, basic income schemes have gained fresh relevance. This is because we actually implemented a basic income, for want of a better term, in the CERB. And it was wildly successful for maintaining a very struggling economy at a time when nothing else was gonna. So, Evelyn Forget was a psychology student in Toronto in 1974 when she first heard about a groundbreaking social experiment that had just begun in the rural Canadian community of Dauphin, Manitoba. I found myself in an economic... Oh, I hate when stupid poppy downy things like that. I found myself in an economics class which I wasn't looking forward to, she remembers. But in the second week, the professor came in and spoke about this wonderful study which was going to revolutionize the way we delivered social programs in Canada. To me, it was a fascinating concept because until then, I'd never really realized you could use economics in any kind of positive way. The experiment was called Mincome, and it had been designed by a group of economists who wanted to do something to address rural poverty. Once it was implemented in the area, it had real results. Over the 4 years that the program ended up running in the 1970s, an average family in Dauphin was guaranteed an annual income of 16 grand, which would have been 11,700 US, 9,400 pounds. With unemployment likely to mount in wake of COVID-19, the concept of introducing a basic income is once again back in vogue on both sides of the Atlantic. Why did these economists start Mincome those 4 decades ago? They wanted to see whether a guaranteed basic income for those below the poverty line could improve quality of life, a grand economic idea that had been around since the Enlightenment, but had barely been tested in practice. I'm just going to skip forward. 74 Canadian policymakers were inspired by a wave of social reforms which had been rolled out through the 60s and early 70s, including the introduction of universal health insurance. Having garnered the support of Canada's federal and provincial governments, University of Manitoba economist Derek Hom, along with the Manitoba civil servants Ron Hickel and Michael Loeb, created a scheme in which Dauphin's poorest residents could apply to receive monthly checks to boost their existing income. At the time, it was the most ambitious social science experiment ever to take place in Canada and saw rates of hospitalizations fall, improvements in mental health, and a rise in the number of children completing high school. It wasn't a case of getting money to live and do nothing, said Sharon Wallace-Storm, who grew up in Dauphin and was 15 when the experiment began. They set a level for how much a family of 3 or 4 needed to get by. You applied, showing how much you were making, and if you didn't meet that threshold, then they wouldn't give. If you didn't meet that threshold, they would give you a top up. Okay, I just want to see if there's like a. Was abruptly stopped in 1979, a casualty of the political and economic turmoil of the late 1970s. A series of oil price shocks had led to rampant inflation and increasing levels of unemployment. This meant that by 79, far more families in Dauphin were seeking assistance than the experiment had budgeted for. Again, it was an experiment's budget that we're talking about, and not like the overall, government just canning the project or anything. Yes, I see Bender wasn't seeing the links on Twitch, so double fisting streams. This is the joy. Facebook chat doesn't link in with this. It does if I type in like but. I just typed in but. Shows up here, no problem. But Bender had written immediately before that. It doesn't show up here. I don't know why. Apparently Facebook keeps changing their algorithm, and that's annoying as all shit. Anyways, the whole point of this is we've done the experiments. We've found that UBI is an effective way of going about doing all this shit and supporting a diverse, wide variety of people. Why the fuck don't we do it? Why the fuck? I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. And UBI, if you include all of the people, so you say, okay, people who are living on a reservation, we're going to have let's say a UBI of $2,000. There you go. And it's not like here's your free money, do nothing. It's okay. Well, how much do you make? You make $500 a week or a month. We'll give you $1,500. Now you have enough to survive. You don't have to fucking hustle. You don't have to feel that stress. You don't have to feel that pain. You just get to survive and thrive. It is super positive for the economy. And you know what? I'll extend that to Jeff Bezos. Because if Jeff Bezos has a month where he makes less than $2,000 Canadian, I have no problem sending him that extra money. I don't think that'll happen, though. I don't think we're really concerned about Bezos not hitting that mark.